How does social media hijack our brains?
Dopamine.
Is it really dopamine's fault we are addicted to social media? What's the difference between natural and artificial dopamine? Alright, so let me start by directly telling you that dopamine isn't the only brain chemical affected by social media. In fact, there is 4 main brain chemicals affected by it. They are what I like to call the big 4. Before we start talking about each one of them, let's talk about what are they and how do they affect us. These 4 substances are neurotransmitters and hormones. What this means is that they are basically proteins that bind to seroreceptors and cause a certain change. They are usually secreted as an answer to real-life events like effort, danger, achievement. Let's take insulin as an example. Insulin is secreted by the pancreas as an answer to a higher blood sugar level. Why is that? We all know that glucose is our main cell's energy source. Now, glucose on its own cannot enter through the cell wall. But when insulin binds to its own receptor on the cell wall, a certain door opens for glucose to enter the cell. Now that we understood this mechanism, let's start by talking about our big 4, starting with the first one, endorphins. Endorphins are our natural painkillers, our natural stress reducers. They give us this feeling that we call euphoria. Naturally, we receive them by exercise, effort, sports, sharing a laughter with our friends, having a tasty meal. The artificial way of receiving endorphins is, for example, scrolling down through funny videos on social media for like half an hour. Now, how does this affect the brain? We're gonna talk about this in a bit. Second on the list is oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love hormone. It's released when we hug someone, when we kiss someone, when we care about someone close to us. For example, our parents, our younger siblings, our partners, when we see someone we love. Oxytocin is also released when we have sex. Now, the artificial way of receiving oxytocin is, for example, by receiving attention and comments on social media, dating apps. Another example of receiving artificial oxytocin is, for example, by watching adult movies. Now, why is this dangerous? What I'm gonna say applies to all 4 substances, but it's particularly important for oxytocin. When your body releases oxytocin naturally, you are in contact with someone. It's physical, it's sentimental. Your senses are working. You are hugging someone, kissing someone, like I already said. But sitting in your own chair, opening a certain website and receiving oxytocin on demand kind of create desensitization. The next time you meet someone, it's not gonna feel the same. Let's move on to dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of reward, of accomplishment, of work. It's what keeps you moving, what keeps you motivated to finish your tasks. You receive dopamine whenever you finish anything you're doing. Now, the artificial way of receiving dopamine is, for example, jumping from video to video, mindless scrolling, binging a TV show. What I'm gonna say now is also relevant to all 4 substances, but it's particularly important for dopamine. There's a lot of ways to increase dopamine naturally. For example, taking a cold shower will cause a big spike in dopamine. What's the difference then between taking a cold shower and mindlessly scrolling for like 3 hours on social media? Now let's compare what happens in our body when we receive a huge spike of dopamine in a natural versus an artificial way. Now let's say I took a cold shower. By the way, this is the baseline. The baseline is the normal level of dopamine when we are resting, non-stimulated. I took a cold shower. My dopamine levels goes up, stays constant for a few hours, and then starts dropping. Back to the baseline. Now in an artificial way, I'm scrolling endlessly. Starts getting up, stays constant for a little bit, and then drops down below the baseline. Now this is very important. Dropping below the baseline is what caused this feeling of fatigue, tiredness, this feeling of depression. Now why did this happen? Simply because taking a cold shower requires effort, requires action. In comparison to mindless scrolling, I'm not doing anything. I'm just scrolling. It's effortless. I'm receiving dopamine basically for doing nothing. My body will keep asking for more, and when I stop giving it this dopamine, it will feel fatigue and depression. Now, this feeling of tiredness is caused by the loss of motivation. Remember when I said dopamine is responsible for keeping us going, for keeping us motivated. Dropping below the baseline I was talking about will stop us from starting to do anything. We're not gonna have the energy to start doing anything, and thus feeling tired all the time. Moving on to the last one on the list, serotonin. Now, serotonin controls our mood, our appetite. It's released when we are meditating, walking around in nature, listening to the sound of the leaves, of the trees, of the sea. Now, serotonin is somewhat also connected to dopamine. An artificial way of receiving serotonin is, for example, these videos with a certain sound frequency that imitate the sounds of nature, of the sea, for example. Now, what I want you to remember is that receiving a big amount of any of these brain chemicals is not the problem. It's in the unnatural way of stimulation that are causing these spikes in these substances. I would like to add that I'm not against using social media since it can be useful in a lot of other ways. But what I want you to understand is that you should control it, not letting it control you.